They live in families. They use tools. They can recognize themselves in a mirror. They grieve for their dead babies. And some of them have learned to communicate with humans, with sign language, and to paint pictures. The great apes are closest cousins from the animal kingdom. Now, chimps and bonobos share 98.4% of our genes, and their blood or kidneys could be given to a human. Should they have rights? Professor Colin Blakemore, heard from you already. That was interesting. On this, I mean, you're famous as somebody who thinks that we should obviously experiment on animals. That's a slightly different issue. But when I was reading the research for this item, I was fascinated and I was moved by some of the things I read. You know, a chimpanzee capable of understanding of communicating with 1,000 symbols and understanding 2,000 words. How can you, according to research, this is the case, how can you deny rights to an animal that is capable of conceptualizing and saying, and I quote, "Can I have an ice cream on my birthday?"
Well, first of all, I challenge your assertion about the linguistic abilities of apes. It's a very controversial academic subject. Yes, apes can understand the use of symbols to express ideas. They can understand that putting a series of symbols in a sequence means something. But as my friend Herb Terrace, who's written eloquently on this subject, says, is it really any different from someone punching into a cash machine when they get money out a certain sequence of numbers and someone else looking at them and interpreting that as the use of language? The problem is really not to question the cognitive abilities of apes, or their value, or the fact that they are under threat and we need to conserve them and protect them and admire them and respect them. The issue is whether giving rights to them is the solution to that problem.
Protection and rights are different
Let's
things.
not forget we have universal rights for human beings and have had for a very long time. And the world is riven with conflicts of all sorts, terrorization and abuse of people on the basis of ethnic differences, religious differences, racial differences, gender differences, whatever. So simply giving rights doesn't guarantee that the people will have better lives.
Coco, the gorilla, had an IQ of 75, apparently. Now, if you said that a human with an IQ of 75 was not your equal, we would ask very serious questions about you.
Well, equal in what sense? Equal, and giving rights doesn't attribute equality. It's a piece of paper. It doesn't guarantee that the obligations that we have to each other and to other animals will automatically be given to them. To concentrate, to focus on the issue of rights, I think dilutes the magnitude of the question we're really discussing, which is the quality and the special distinctive nature of apes and our obligations to do all that we can to protect them.
There's a big moral dimension to this as well, because some people of faith say we are unique, we are special. Others say we are merely at the end of a continuum, and that's, I guess, what you argue, Paula. But you think apes are people. Explain.
Persons.
Yeah.
They are persons because, like Coco, in your example, they can't look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm Coco. They can say, I'm a gorilla, a wonderful animal.
Talk about things he's a gorilla. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Talk about things that happened many years in the past, that bad things that were done to them. They can project into the future and have plans. And they behave in many ways, and they have the emotional and intellectual capacities of 2 to 3-year-old children with some additional capacities which are developed in humans only later, if at all.
You told me earlier on when we were having a cup of tea before the program that you know chimpanzees or apes that have told jokes.
Yeah, Coco herself was making a lot of jokes about her plastic crocodile biting her and making wounds, or about her being a bird rather than a gorilla and pretending to fly and then laughing and saying, oh, I'm a gorilla. You know, they use metaphors. They use things that they learn in a rotten apple to insult somebody, even to make the gestures like you're totally rotten, Michael. You know, they they rhyme words with each other, and they behave so much like children. They love the stories being told to them over and over again, and they go back with a book and they look at it, and by themselves they keep on talking and reproducing the story, commenting on it.
And they plan for the future.
If you don't want to call that talking, you want to call it use of language, or you want to call it something else, that doesn't matter. The important thing is that they are
is anthropomorphic wishful thinking. The whole business about at ape language and signing has been fatally undermined. There are several people who have gone into these places and worked with Koko the gorilla, worked with other chimpanzees, who have actually, because they're profoundly deaf, been experts in American Sign Language. And they've often been castigated by their fellow researchers and their bosses because their notebooks at the end of a session have been absolutely empty. The reason they're absolutely empty is that they firmly believe that these apes have never actually, in fact, signed anything at all. It's all in the mind of the beholder.
But even if it were true that apes are as clever as all that, and as nice as all that, if they had to decide, if somebody came to me and said, decide, this investigation must take place on something, is it going to happen on that disabled human or this fantastically clever ape? For me, for reasons which aren't entirely logical, I'll say ape every time. In fact, take 2 apes rather than that disabled baby. Because humans are in my circle. They're just in. And I make myself maybe too many arguments to keep non-humans out, and I agree that there's a challenge there, constant moral challenge, but experiment on a disabled baby or on an ape, it's the ape every time.
But Ian, what about this sense of awareness? They are aware, they know that they're aware, they know that we're aware, they know we have internal thoughts, they attribute beliefs to themselves, they attribute beliefs to others. Do they have this so-called theory of mind?
I would say from my experience, yes. I've had the good fortune to live and work in the wild with apes who have never been taught anything other than what their parents taught them and what their instincts tell them to do. And that combination of instinct and nurture during their long childhood
We've got some pictures of you with some of your friends.
Produces adults who every day make decisions that the survival of their family depends on. And when you meet individuals like that, I think of them as beings. And when people say human being, they think that's one word, but of course it's 2 words, and these are non-human beings. And as such, I think they deserve our respect. Now, you can argue whether rights, which is a human construct anyway, can be extended to great apes. I think it's not that long since we would have been questioning whether we should give rights to black people or to women. Women, for crying out loud.
Kerry, calm down. Calm down.
And we're now,
it's all right.
That's a very good reason.
We're now extending that circle of compassion and respect beyond the human boundary. And I agree it's a very difficult step to take, but if you don't take it, then you're ignoring the evidence. And the evidence is that it's not anthropomorphism to attribute what apes are doing to their
attribute into animals to call it as a human being.
It's more zoomorphism to recognize that we are great apes and that we share much of the behavioral capacity of great apes. And so when you see them behave in a way that a 6-year-old child might do, then you know that it's wrong to allow a 6-year-old child to be chained up or to be mistreated.
In what way would you equate, and the most intelligent chimpanzee or monkey or ape or whatever, what level of, would you put their intelligence at? A 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, what?
It depends which task you're challenging them with.
But is it like...
And if you're talking about an adult ape who's got 50 years of experience of looking after his family, it's silly to equate them with a...
Do they plan for the future? Do they have a concept of the future?
Yes. I think, from my experience of watching mountain gorillas move around their habitat, take decisions based on what they know of the presence of other groups, interact with each other, you can see them think ahead. OK, they're going that way, I'm going this way, I'll meet them there.
But so do all animals that need to plan for the future in order to survive. In fact, all of these criteria that people have set up for essentially human nature, things like planning for the future, recognizing empathy, deceit, and so on. Actually, most of them are fulfilled by certain classes of birds, scrub jays.
Do scrub jays have empathy?
Well, they certainly recognize that their relationship with each other is just different with the relationship with the inanimate world. They plan for the
cognition across the board like that. I mean,
so we're special, are we?
Colin's quite. Well, yes, we are.
Are we special?
We are absolutely special, and I would ask, why on earth are you so desperate to prove that apes are like humans? I think we're demeaning humanity and our humanity with this endeavour. And it doesn't make us animal haters just because we recognise that we are a superior species.
Are we?
Yes. Absolutely.
But what rights do you think that apes, higher primates, should have, Paula?
We're only asking for 3 rights. The right not to be killed, not to be tortured, and not to be imprisoned arbitrarily.
What's wrong with that, Peter Hitchens?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's the basis on which it's being requested that worries me. Yes. I'm not sure what human rights are. In fact, I don't think they exist. What rights we have, and no one's ever been able to explain to me where human rights derive from. They seem to be entirely subjective. We decide at any given time what human rights people have, and we have human rights courts which constantly change their minds about what those rights are. It's a completely fluid, useless, atheistical conception, as far as I'm concerned. We have other duties. As far as I'm concerned, all our duties and obligations arise from the religious obligations of Christianity, and they would certainly tell us that we should treat our fellow creatures with as much kindness as we conceivably can. But elevating this idea that apes are the same as us and have rights just seems to me to be absurd.
They're not that far behind us.
The trouble is, you'll end up, if you follow this argument, you'll end up eating nothing but lentils.
Yeah.